Hi. Hope you're well. Hope you're all doing well. Hope everything is just going as well as possible. How well are you? As well can be, I hope. What's up, motherfuckers? I'm doing a Riley Martin impression there. You Howard Stern fans, you know what I'm talking about. Looky here, motherfucker. God, remember how funny Howard Stern used to be? God damn, he sucks now. Terrible. Awful. But this isn't a Howard Stern video. That's right, a Wire video. You can never have enough Wire videos as far as I'm concerned. There's always more room for Wire. And I'm going to get right into it. For me, there are four phases of Wire. And you Wire fans, you can disagree with me or agree with me or not give a shit. I don't care. But as a longtime Wire fan, I feel like there are four very distinct periods of Wire. There's the 70s Wire, there's the 80s Wire, there's the 90s Wire, and then there's the Wire of the 21st century. The last 20 plus years, basically. There have been four very distinct movements with this band. All have been fantastic. And I find that most Wire fans have a preferred period. I think the vast majority of Wire fans, they all prefer the 70s period, the three albums from the 70s, which is what I'm going to talk about here. I am actually the biggest fan of their recent stuff, the 21st Century Wire, because you have to keep in mind this band has been around for almost 50 years, y'all. 47 years, maybe 48 years. Their first record came out 47 years ago. Or 40, was it 46? It's almost 50 years, either way. This band has been around a long time. They put out a lot of albums, and they're still around, and they're still making fantastic music. I love Wire. I cannot express my adoration for this band. For a band to still be making records that are really relevant, in my opinion, and they sound fantastic, and their songwriting abilities are still there, and their performative abilities are still there, and their artistic abilities are still there, intact, that is saying something. I mean, think about this. How many other bands have been around for over 40 years that you can think of that are still putting out phenomenal work? Don't say Depeche Mode, because they're not putting out good albums anymore. Depeche Mode hasn't put out a good album in a long time. Wire, on the other hand, still puts out great shit. Their last album, Mind Hive, I think it's been out for 4 years now. In fact, I wonder what they're doing because they haven't put out an album for 4 years. But Mind Hive, their last album, extraordinary. One of their best, I think. In my opinion, it's one of their best albums they've ever produced. So that's hard, y'all. In my opinion, that is a tough thing to pull off. Wire, absolutely, is one of my favorite bands of all time. If I had to devise a top 10 list of bands, Wire would be in there. I was thinking about it prior to this video, too. There's really only one video that Wire has ever done that I've never really been able to get into. And I feel this way about their 80s period. The 80s is my least favorite decade from Wire. I still like those albums, but albums like Ideal Copy, A Bell as a Cup Until It's Struck, and It's Beginning to and Back Again, that's the one album I've never really been able to get into. I've tried then, and I've tried now, and I don't think the album was very good when it came out. I was only a kid when it came out, like, 14, 15 years old, something like that. And I've listened to it recently, and I still can't get into it. That's the one Wire album that I've never been able to warm up to. And it's kind of a tricky one to call an album anyway. It's sort of a compilation, re-recordings. It does have some live stuff on it, but they've been known to do that. It's not the first time they've done that, or not the last time they've done that. They tend to re-examine their past catalog and re-record it in these new versions and ideas. And that's one of the things I love about Wire. They're able to take old stuff they've done and make it interesting still. But It's Beginning to and Back Again is the one exception. I've never been able to warm up to that album. Do you disagree with me? I don't know. That's the one Wire album I've just never been able to sit down and really fully enjoy. I think it goes on a bit. I think it's a little long. I think they got a little too preoccupied with that 80s compressed drum sound. I mean, they were experimenting, but that's the main issue I have with a lot of 80s Wire. It sounds dated, and it sounded dated when it came out. I will say my favorite 80s album from Wire is The Ideal Copy. I think that's a fantastic record, but I've been rambling for 5 minutes about other stuff. I should be talking about 70s Wire, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm talking about the first 3 records, and let's do that, shall we? Now, I think the vast majority of Wire fans consider this triumvirate of records to be their finest work, and I wouldn't argue with that. Anybody could make an argument about their favorite Wire album or period, and I wouldn't be able to argue with it. Even when Wire makes a bad album, it's still cool. It's still interesting. It's Beginning to and Back Again. It's still a good album. It's just not my favorite. They've never been boring. And do you know how fucking hard this is to pull off when you've been around for almost 50 years? To never do anything boring? Again, this is just an opinion, but I've never heard a boring Wire track, ever. Ever. Even when this band is not being as good as other stuff they've done, they're still being excellent. I mean, some bands, their bar is so obscenely high that even their bad stuff trumps another band's good stuff. And Wire is the ultimate band for that. This is their first album, Pink Flag. For lots of people, this is their best album. It's not my favorite album from theirs, but how brilliant is this record? I'm not arguing with anybody. Pink Flag, man. This is how they landed with a thud into our world. This is their most pure punk, whatever album. People love calling Wire post-punk, but you subscribers of my channel know that I am not fond of that term. I don't like it. I think if you were to pick any album in their catalog, though, that's just straight up punk or whatever the fuck you want to call it, it would be this. Their first album. This is the US edition. I don't know which pressing this is. I feel like this album has been pressed a lot. You'll notice a promo hole. I'm assuming I bought this at a used record store at the time. I bought this sealed at the time. I still have the shrink wrap on it, as you can see. The US editions had this warning on it. I don't think the European labels put this on the cover. And it's Harvest, but I think Harvest was their label in Europe too, right? But this came out in the United States with this warning. They say some naughty words on this. Oh my goodness. Europeans aren't uptight like the United States is. I'm not saying Europeans are not uptight. They are, just in different ways. No one's as uptight as the United States. I mean, is anybody arguing this? I'm an American, I know, okay? So, yeah, you get the warning sticker, but it's kind of charming, I guess. This is pre-Tipper Gore parental advisory label nonsense. They just straight up printed the warning right onto the cover. But yeah, this is a promo. And this is an original US press. I've never bought any other issue of this. I've noticed that this has been reissued many times, but why would I do that? I already have this. And I bought it new, basically. I think I bought this back in the late 80s or early 90s. So it had existed for a while. There's that promo hole going through the inner sleeve. But here you go. Here's the inner sleeve. I know you guys like staring at physical media. And here are the labels. I'd love to know how many pressings of this there are. I'll go search for this later on. I would think this original US edition in near mint condition, like mine is, would probably be worth something. Probably be worth a pretty penny. I think it should be. This is a great album. This is how they entered our world. Many people first learned of Wire when this album came out. I was too young to know what the hell was going on. I was a toddler when this came out. I didn't hear this album until at least a full decade after it had been released, but I do remember thinking, holy shit, this is 10 years old? Hasn't aged a day. Has it aged here in 2024? I think it's aged a little bit, but not much. I mean, this is still a rockin' album. And what a way to enter our world, man. This is a fantastic record. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, or it doesn't surprise me at all, that the vast majority of Wire fans probably think this is their best album. I'm not going to argue with that. It's not my favorite, but Jesus, what a great album. Pink Flag, man. Debut albums don't get much better than this, man. Serious track listing on here. My favorite might be Ex-Lion Tamer. Ex-Lion Tamer, oh my God. I mean, it's hard to put. Mannequin, Feeling Called Love. Look at this track listing, man. There's 21 songs on here, and there's not a bad song on here. I think there's 21, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Yep, 21. It's still only 40 minutes long. I mean, we're talking about songs that are 2 minutes and under. There are only a couple of songs that are over 2 minutes. Maybe 1 or 2 songs that are 3 minutes, but lots of in and out tracks, man. The old in and out. Pink Flag. If 70s is your favorite era of Wire, let me know why that is. What do you like about these first 3 albums? I think the first 3 albums are different in very subtle ways. In fact, piggybacking on that thought is my favorite Wire album, Chairs Missing. If I had to pick a favorite Wire album, it would absolutely be Chairs Missing. I just think this album is absolute perfection. All of these issues, by the way, or wait, no, this isn't American. Oh yeah, this is the European issue. Whoops, sorry. 2 of the 3 are US editions here. This is a European issue. I assume this got released in the United States. I don't know. It must have. I just don't have it. Chairs Missing. How gorgeous is this record? I feel like this, in a weird way, this is like the beginning template for everything Wire did after. And I'm talking all the way up through Mind Hive. This is where their songwriting and their recording processes and artistic processes really started gelling and melding together. This is a beautiful record. When you listen to this and you realize it's 45 years old, it's like, wow. Or 46 years old. This album hasn't aged a millisecond. It's still as gorgeous as it's ever been. Some of their finest tracks they've ever done are on this record, in my opinion. Tracks like Mercy. I mean, people, come on. Do songs get any better than Mercy? Maybe my favorite Wire song. I Am the Flies on here. Outdoor Miner. A Practice Makes Perfect. Heartbeat. If you've never heard this record somehow and you've stumbled upon this video, listen to this immediately. Immediately. Where does this record stand in your pantheon of finest Wire albums? This is my favorite right here. Wire, Chairs Missing. Here's the inner sleeve. I always thought this is kind of a cool inner sleeve. It's got rounded edges. Again, this is on Harvest. Get some lyric action going on there. I'll show you the labels. Just more boring green Harvest labels. There you go. One of the finest albums of all time. Because I mentioned Wire would be in my top 10 bands, and this is my favorite album. So you can imagine my favorite album from Wire. So you can imagine where this album, excuse me, where this album might stand in the pantheon of my all-time favorites. I'm getting all choked up talking about it. I haven't really talked today, so obviously I was not prepared to talk with any enthusiasm or passion. Sorry about that, people. Aren't you glad you tuned in? But one of the finest records of all time. Chairs Missing. Holy shit. This is a holy shit album. And if you haven't heard this record somehow, holy shit. What are you doing? Chairs Missing. And they've reissued this a number of times. So if you need to have this on vinyl, it's not hard to find. I would guess the original pressings like this are probably more money, but Wire does repress and reissue their own records too. They have their own website, pinkflag.com. So, but Chairs Missing is absolutely one of my favorite albums. And ending off the triumvirate of 70s albums, we have 154. How gorgeous is this record? Jesus. I mean, Jesus. This is a promo copy. This is a US edition. Got the promo stamp on there. And I think this came out on Warner Brothers. Yeah, this is a Warner Brothers release. They were on Warner for a brief amount of time, at least here in the United States. But yes, this is an original US edition, another perfect album. Many Wire fans find this to be their best work. Wouldn't argue with you. This would be in my top 5 for sure. The 15th is one of the greatest pop rock songs I've ever heard in my life. The 15th. Track number 3, I believe, right? Track number 3, yes. I should have known better. The track it starts off with. Map reference 41 degrees north, 93 degrees west. One of the most sexily titled tracks of all time. How great is that song? Forget about it. Any of these songs. This is a beautiful record. These are the 3 albums from the 70s, and I totally understand why this would be someone's favorite era of Wire. This would be a close second for me. My favorite era, again, is the 21st century. The last 20 plus years of their catalog, I think, is brilliant. Outstanding stuff. These 3 albums would be a close second. I think what they've done and what they did in the 70s was, Wire was solidifying their place in the world as a completely and utterly unique experience. In the 80s, they got distracted with electronics and technology, I think a little too much. They did that compressed digital drum sound a little too hard. It kind of muddied. A lot of their production is muddy, which I don't like. I still like the 80s stuff, but it's my least favorite. I think in the 90s, they didn't do a lot in the 90s as a band, but the stuff they did on their own was really interesting. Like Colin Newman had his Swim label in the 90s. He got into techno and drum and bass. In fact, a couple months ago, they released the Bastard album on vinyl for the first time. They didn't release that on vinyl back in the 90s, but it just came out a few months ago. So those of you who like Colin Newman's solo stuff, and Bastard in particular, go pick that up, because Bastard, in my opinion, is the best Colin Newman solo album. His first album is way up there too. Is it A to Z? I can't remember the name of it. A to Z. That's a brilliant album too, but I would put Bastard at the top. So you 90s fans of Wire, if you don't have Colin Newman Bastard, go get it. But I'm not arguing with anybody who might think that the 70s era Wire is their best era. It's, post-punk, punk, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's Wire. That's really the only genre tag you need. Wire exists in their own air. And 154 is a great example of that. It's just very complicated, sophisticated music. It's too sophisticated to be pigeonholed into a genre, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, that is the truth. Here's the inner sleeve, by the way, because I know you like staring at things. Physical shit. Get the lyrics. And how brilliant of a lyricist is Colin Newman? I just love his lyrics. Very weird, very surreal, very funny. This is a very funny, droll band. One of the things I really like about these guys is their sense of humor. And you hear it on this record. Sorry for all the reflections there, but there is 154. And that's the gist of my video. I just wanted to talk about Wire. And I wanted to raise this possible debate about why someone might like certain phases of Wire more than others. I think there's 80s, 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 21st century Wire. Do you have a favorite, or does it matter? In my mind, I was forced to pick a favorite. But really, I wouldn't want to live in this atmosphere without all genres and periods and decades of Wire. This in particular. Wire is one of those groups, like whenever I do one of these videos for YouTube, I'm currently listening to that band or an album a lot in that time period, and then I move on to the next thing. Wire is a band that's in constant rotation with me. Constant. And this has been true for the last 30 plus years of my life. Wire is not a band I ever put on the shelf, ever. They're always in the rotation. I'll listen to a new album and I'll listen to it front to back over and over for like a week straight. And then Wire is one of those bands that I go back to, like a transitional band almost. And that's putting them down too much. I mean, what I'm trying to say is there's just never been a time in my life where Wire wasn't being listened to. I listen to these guys every month at least 3 or 4 times. They've just got so much music out there, so many different avenues, so many different genres and styles they've tried. Not to mention their solo shit. Colin Newman, Dome, all of the stuff they did outside of Wire. I mean, there's just a whole vast world of brilliance waiting for you with Wire. And I know I've done previous Wire videos, and I'll probably do more in the future. I can't talk about these guys enough. And I feel like not enough people know these guys. To me, that's mind-blowing, but if you don't know Wire, you need to get acquainted with this band. And why not start here? Just start at the beginning and work your way up and enjoy life from there on out, because these guys have a lot of shit. And they're still around, and they're still crushing it, and they're still one of the greatest bands of all time. And that's what I have to say, and I'm sticking to it. Until next time, bye.